About a month ago at a recent PAX event, some people got the opportunity to play Dead Island 2 pretty early, and in this video we'll be going over the thoughts of those people that got to play Dead Island 2 early, going over the early reviews of the game, going over the positives of Dead Island 2 and the negatives that we know so far. We'll be covering all of that in this video, doing pretty much an early review on Dead Island 2. So let's waste no more time and let's get straight into the video. So the first thing we're going to talk about that people have experienced with Dead Island 2 is the dialogue of the characters. So put it simply, there is too much dialogue, and the dialogue for characters is overused. Characters such as Amy, one of the playable protagonists within Dead Island 2, there is just too much dialogue, and they're telling you absolutely everything that is going on, as if, you know, you're barely even playing the game, and you have no idea what you're doing. There's just too much dialogue, and it just doesn't feel realistic or natural at all. The characters will tell you absolutely everywhere that you need to go, and absolutely everything that you need to do, just making it seem really unnatural, as if they are literally talking to you, even though, you know, you're the one playing as them. It just really feels a bit weird, and it doesn't work that well. But of course, for those that struggle a bit with the game, then it is going to be very helpful, so there is a plus side to this, of course. But for most players, and to be honest, for your just average gamer, this is just going to be too much dialogue, and it isn't going to feel that realistic. But of course, it isn't a problem for those that do need it. So, moving on. In a previous video where I go over 12 things that you should do before Dead Island 2 releases, I look at the PC requirements for the game. I'll link that video in the description, by the way. And I looked at the PC requirements, and I discussed how I thought the PC requirements were quite demanding, and that maybe the optimization wasn't going to be very strong for the game, and that it is going to be a bit like The Last of Us Part 1 for PC, where the PC requirements were so high, mainly because the optimization was awful, and I thought that might be the case with Dead Island 2. Well, so far from the early reviews, it looks like that isn't going to be the case. It looks like the optimization is actually pretty strong, which is really nice to see. With so many games releasing at the moment, there's been so many that have just had really poor optimization, so they can push out the game sooner. But it does seem like with Dead Island 2, the optimization is very strong. I mean, after all, it's been about 7 years since the game started development, but it is looking very strong, and it looks like, yeah, the optimization will be great, so there shouldn't be any performance issues. Now, of course, if you do have a very weak PC, then there may be a few issues, but it looks like for most people with a decent PC, and for those of you on console, of course, it should be a very smooth experience in terms of the graphics and the frame rate. Along with that, it looks like there is very little in terms of bugs and glitches. It seems like it's a pretty smooth experience as well. I suppose this sort of goes under optimization as well, but it looks like there's a very limited amount of bugs and very few glitches that were encountered throughout people's playthroughs, which is really nice to see. Of course, typically at launch of a game, there's loads of bugs and glitches. Of course, it could still be the case. It could be that the review version of the game was slightly better, just so that they gave a good impression. But at the same time, hopefully it'll be pretty similar, and it looks like there are going to be very few bugs and glitches, which is really nice to see from a game at launch. Usually, people go in expecting many bugs and glitches when it releases, but hopefully we won't have to worry about those at all with Dead Island 2. So now let's talk a little bit about one of the biggest parts of the game, and that is the combat within Dead Island 2. Now, it looks like the main part of combat, which has been said by the creative director at this event, is going to be melee weapons. Now, it looks like, of course, guns are going to be part of the game, but they are not going to play as big of a part, and melee weapons are actually going to be more powerful weapons and stronger weapons than using firearms. Now, firearms are still an option, and on your weapon wheel you do have 8 slots, and the creative director at the time was using 3 of those for guns, but it does look like mainly you are going to be using melee weapons throughout this game, since that's really what the game was designed for and always has been designed for. Now, guns are an option for those that really want to use them, but the game is really pushing those melee weapons as the main source of weaponry and the main way to go about combat within Dead Island 2. But yeah, guns are still there for those that want them. Personally, I think this is absolutely fine, and I don't really have any issues with mainly using melee weapons within the game. To be honest, I planned on only really using melee weapons, since throughout the gameplay that we've seen, it's mainly melee weapons that have been used, and it does seem like the more fun and, you know, the better designed option within the game for combat. So yeah, I'm more than happy with that, to be honest. But I would like to hear your thoughts on that down below, if you would rather use firearms or if you are happy with melee combat as well. Let me know down below in the comments. So next, let's stick sort of with the combat side of things, but look at the skill cards and the general, you know, skill system. Now, one of the interesting things is that you can't actually dodge and block within the same set, if that makes sense. You can only have one of those skills equipped. So if you want to be, you know, mainly dodging, then you'll equip the dodge card. But if you mainly want to be blocking, so then you'll want to equip that block card, of course. It really depends on your combat style and how you tend to play the game, but of course you can switch those up as much as you want throughout the game and your playthrough. But it is just worth noting there's going to be a few skills like that where, you know, you can't have both of them equipped, since they come under the same category. You can only have a certain amount equipped within one category. So yeah, you're going to have to switch things up, and you're going to have to, you know, really think about what skills you want equipped when you do go into things. Some might not like that, some may like that. Of course, it, adds more thinking to the combat, and yeah, you're really going to think about your style of combat to be able to pick the skills that really suit you. Now, going back to weapons, something worth noting about weapons within Dead Island 2 is that they can actually break, since there is a weapon durability system within Dead Island 2. Now, luckily, when they do break, that isn't it. You can actually use those weapons again. What you need to do is go ahead and repair those weapons, and then, of course, they are ready for use again until they break. So you can continuously just keep on repairing weapons when they do break. So if you really like one, then you can stick with that throughout your whole playthrough, providing, obviously, it is good enough. But yeah, you're able to repair your weapons throughout the game as much as you like. So you don't really have to worry about the weapon durability. It might get a little bit annoying, but generally speaking, it shouldn't really cause any issues at all. So the main reason that the durability system is there is obviously to get you to use more weapons within the game, which I guess is a good thing, to be honest. So of course the main thing about Dead Island 2 is going to be the overall mechanics and the story, but what happens when you actually finish Dead Island 2? What happens when the game finishes, and what is there to do, once you finish the entire story? And there is actually going to be quite a bit to do, since when the story actually ends, you unlock new side missions and a new strain of side missions within the game, which could take a good couple hours to complete. So there's going to be stuff for you to do after you complete the story, such as obviously completing those side missions and getting all the collectibles and, trying out new weapons and everything like that. All of that will still be available once you finish the story. It's not just going to roll the credits and that's that, and then you start again from the beginning. You do get to still explore the world and complete certain missions and find certain collectibles once you have finished the story. So you can save all of that until after the main story missions if that's something you would rather do. The option is there for you to do that. So let's talk about New Game Plus, and well, this is where we get a bit of a negative about the game. Unfortunately, at launch, there won't be any sort of New Game Plus feature. However, this is one of the post-launch updates that the developers are looking at implementing, which is pretty common, and I have no doubt it will definitely be implemented. We see it with games such as God of War Ragnarok pretty recently, where that got a New Game Plus update a couple months after its release. Now, I have no doubt it will be the same with Dead Island 2, where we get New Game Plus a little bit after release, which isn't really an issue, since obviously you're not really going to be finishing the game as soon as the game does release. So, it gives you time to finish the game, and then hopefully a little while after we will get the New Game Plus update, so then of course you can use that feature. But then we do link in with a bit of a positive there, in that there will be post-launch updates. Of course, we know this from the Gold Edition, where you do get the expansion pass, so there will be some DLCs and everything like that releasing for this game, but there will also be some nice free post-launch updates, hopefully like the New Game Plus updates that we'll get at some point. So lastly, I'm going to talk about two features. The first one is the FOV slider, something we see very often within games like Call of Duty, and it will be featured within Dead Island 2, and not just on PC. This will be on consoles as well. A really nice feature there for those that want it. And interestingly, there will be no difficulty selection system for this game. Some would see this as a negative, and I can see why. Obviously, if you are maybe not as strong at games as some other players, then you may struggle a bit with this game. But of course, the game isn't really designed to be a very difficult game, so generally speaking, for your average casual gamer, this should be absolutely fine and shouldn't cause any issues at all, and you should still be able to enjoy the game without any real difficulty. But it is just worth noting that you won't be able to select an easy difficulty at the beginning of this game. And of course, for those of you looking for a real challenge, then of course maybe this isn't the game for you, since there isn't any sort of difficulty selector. But there we go, that does just about wrap up things here, and as you can see, pretty positive overall. Of course, there are a few negatives, mainly when it comes to the dialogue side of things, but generally speaking, there's lots and lots of positives, and we're getting so close to the release of Dead Island 2 on the 21st of April. So yeah, that does just about wrap up things here. Now, I have actually done a video where I go over 12 things you need to do before Dead Island 2 releases. A link to that video is on the screen now. If you're interested in watching it, then go ahead and join me over there.